You didn't lose your spark. You stopped confusing chaos with chemistry. And that realization was uncomfortable because for a long time, intensity felt like connection. The highs, the lows, the urgency, the feeling that something mattered. Because it hurt. You were taught that love should feel consuming. That calm meant boredom. That steadiness meant settling. But your body was paying the price. You felt it in the constant anticipation, in the way your nervous system never rested, in how silence felt threatening instead of peaceful, in how calm partners made you restless instead of safe. So you reached for intensity, not because it was healthy, but because it was familiar. Intensity kept you alert. It kept you needed. It kept you proving. But something shifted. Quietly, you stopped feeling pulled toward emotional extremes. You stopped craving the rush of unpredictability. You stopped mistaking anxiety for passion, and that confused you because the old patterns no longer worked. What once felt exciting now feels exhausting. What once felt magnetic now feels destabilizing. Your body started choosing peace before your mind could explain why. That's not detachment, that's regulation. When you heal, your nervous system recalibrates. It stops mistaking intensity for intimacy. It stops bonding through adrenaline. It stops chasing emotional spikes. As proof of connection, you begin to recognize how intensity often requires you to abandon yourself, to stay alert, to stay flexible, to stay accommodating. You were always adjusting, reading moods, managing reactions, holding space alone. That wasn't love. That was emotional labor. And once your body learns what safety feels like, intensity loses its appeal because safety doesn't demand urgency. It doesn't punish stillness. It doesn't disappear. When you stop performing, you begin to notice how regulated connection feels quieter, more grounded, less consuming, but more sustaining. You no longer feel drawn to relationships that keep you guessing. You're not interested in proving your worth through endurance. You don't want love. That has to be earned through emotional turbulence. You want consistency. That doesn't require explanation. You want presence. That doesn't come with conditions. You want connection. That doesn't hijack your nervous system. This isn't you becoming less passionate. This is you becoming safer inside yourself. And from that place, intensity stops feeling romantic. It starts feeling unnecessary. And that's the moment your standards quietly rise without effort. At first, you thought something was wrong with you. You felt less excited, less pulled, less hooked. The highs didn't hit the same. The lows didn't feel romantic anymore. What once felt like chemistry started to feel like tension. What once felt magnetic started to feel loud. Your body noticed before your mind did. The tightness, the fatigue, the subtle dread. Before conversations that used to feel thrilling, you weren't becoming cold. You were becoming regulated. Emotional intensity isn't depth. It's activation. It's unpredictability. Inconsistency. The nervous system staying alert. For a long time, your body learned to associate activation with connection, fast bonding, emotional disclosure without safety, high highs that required low lows. That wasn't passion. It was survival chemistry. And now, your system doesn't need it anymore. That's why intensity feels off. Not boring, not wrong, just unnecessary. You're no longer drawn to people who make you guess where you stand. You're no longer intrigued by emotional volatility. That requires you to stay sharp, adaptable, careful. Your body wants consistency, predictability, responsiveness, not because you've lowered your standards, Because you've raised your capacity for safety. You don't confuse intensity with intimacy anymore. You notice how real closeness doesn't spike your nervous system, it settles it. You notice how connection doesn't need chaos to feel alive, it needs presence. And that's the shift. You're not losing desire, you're refining it. Your attraction is no longer led by adrenaline, it's led by regulation, by how someone feels in your body, not how strongly they pull your emotions. That's not detachment, that's maturity, and your body knows it. At some point, your body stopped calling chaos chemistry, not because you stopped caring, but because your nervous system learned the cost. You began to notice how intensity required vigilance, how passion came with unpredictability, how closeness was followed by withdrawal. Your body was always working, reading tone, tracking shifts, preparing for impact. That wasn't depth, that was survival. Emotional intensity often feels powerful because it activates familiarity, not safety. It mirrors what you learned early. That love requires alertness. That closeness comes with risk. That connection must be managed. Your body confused activation with intimacy because activation felt known. But something changed. Your system began to tire. Not dramatically, quietly. You noticed how drained you felt after emotional highs, how empty the lows became, how little space there was for rest. You started craving predictability, not boredom, but steadiness. You wanted to feel chosen without having to earn it, wanted to feel close without bracing for distance. And that's when intensity lost its pull, because your body finally understood that peace is not absence of feeling, it is presence without threat. Intensity demands attention. Safety allows presence. One keeps you alert, the other lets you arrive. You didn't become cold, you became regulated. You didn't lose your spark, you stopped setting yourself on fire. To feel alive, your nervous system recalibrated. It learned that connection doesn't need spikes to be real, doesn't need tension to be meaningful. And once your body learns that, there is no going back, because you can't unknow what calm feels like. You can't unfeel how your chest softens when you're not anticipating loss. You can't ignore the relief of consistency, the ease of being met, the quiet of not overthinking. This is why intensity now feels loud, why chaos feels disruptive, why unpredictability feels unattractive. Not because you're boring, but because you're no longer dissociated from your own needs. Your body doesn't crave the edge anymore. It craves safety, clarity, reciprocity, and that is not settling. That is evolution. And this is the part that often goes unnamed. You didn't lose your spark. You didn't become boring. You didn't stop caring. You stopped mistaking intensity for intimacy. Your body learned that chaos is not chemistry. That urgency is not desire. That emotional highs always come with emotional crashes. And you reached a point where your nervous system refused to keep paying that cost. So now, what once pulled you in no longer does. The unpredictability, the hot and cold, the closeness followed by distance. Your body reads it as noise, not excitement, not depth, just instability. And instead, you're drawn to something quieter, consistency, presence, someone whose interest doesn't need decoding, someone whose care doesn't require emotional labor. This doesn't feel dramatic. It feels steady. And that steadiness might have scared you at first, because your system was trained to equate love with intensity. But what you're feeling now is not numbness, it's regulation, it's safety, it's your body saying, I don't need to brace anymore. You no longer chase feelings that spike your nervous system. You listen to what calms it. You notice who feels easy to be around, who doesn't drain you, who doesn't require you to shrink or perform. That's not settling. That's discernment. That's maturity. That's self-trust. You still feel deeply. You just don't abandon yourself to feel something. And the right connection won't overwhelm you. It won't confuse you. It won't exhaust you. It will meet you where your nervous system can finally rest. That's the shift, not away from love, but toward the kind that doesn't cost you yourself.